Hi there, this is your Pal Pallie, and welcome to my new series of raid guides called Git Er Raid. This is Tier 15 Heroic Throne of Thunder, and next up is Horridon. This encounter is only slightly changed from normal mode in terms of mechanics, but everything has more health and the bad stuff hurts a lot more. You'll need 2 tanks, a mix of DPS, and 2 to 3 heals for downing this encounter. Once again, I'll assume you know the normal mode mechanics and focus in on heroic only changes and strategy. Besides the normal increased damage and health of everything in the encounter, the only change to this boss is that about every minute, Horridon will do a dire call. This will hit the raid pretty hard, and it will spawn a pink Dino ad that fixates on a random raid member. This Dino is only visible and targetable by that fixated raid member, and it is also unkillable. It will hunt you down for the entirety of the fight. It is fairly slow, but if it reaches you, it will 1 or 2 shot you with its melee. So how do you deal with your pink Dino? Well, every time you hit it with an attack, it will get knocked back and then keep pursuing you. You will have to manage knocking it back over and over again throughout the 10 plus minutes of this fight if you are unlucky enough to get one of these dinos early on. The dinos are not slowable or stunnable, but you obviously have control over where it goes by how you kite it. I won't go into per class details, but you can see some of the ways I dealt with it as a hunter in the course of this guide. After I recorded this video, I did find out that snake traps are immensely useful for hunters to knock back the dino. Live and learn. Just find something that works for your class and go with it. Another note on the pink dino. Dire Carl will prefer to call a dino on DPS before starting to pick on healers and tanks. Tanks are usually last, but due to the length of the fight, everyone will have a dino at the end, so everyone needs to be prepared to deal with it. Really, the main reason for this dino is to distract you from your normal duties. From here, I'll mention a couple more general strategy points before we briefly take a look at each door and then the last phase. Obviously, everything hurts more on heroic mode, but positioning also becomes tighter, so one thing people in your raid need to practice is dealing with Horridon's charge ability. If he fixates on anyone, that person should try to run towards Horridon while he is getting ready to charge, and then stepping out of the swipes. It may not seem like much, but when he fixates on a melee DPS and then the swipe is all over the tank and the ads and people are scurrying about, people can lose focus and die in stupid ways. Just make it easy and try to keep Horridon positioned generally in the same place per door to give your ad tank lots of room to maneuver. This fight is long, damn long, and that's really a tough part about it. But it also means you have the ability to use major CDs liberally throughout the fight. For example, I'm able to get off 3 stampedes since it is a 5-minute CD. Don't hesitate to use those cooldowns to get things cleaned up quickly or add additional DPS to Horridon per door. Speaking of DPS split, you will have to find a balance that works for your raid group. In normal mode, Horridon doesn't have very much health, and he dies in short order in the last phase with the 200% DPS increase. While the DPS buff is there at the end in Heroic, Horridon has a huge health pool, and you need to try to chip away at that between and during doors as much as you can, otherwise you'll hit the enrage timer. A goal of between 70 and 80% after the 4th door seems to be about what you need to do for a kill. So for example, in this kill video, we would have melee DPS be on the initial small ads that came out of the first 2 doors, while range focused on Horridon. Once the big elite mob spawned, everyone was on ad duty. But you'll notice that I also spent a few globals here and there putting my longer dots and CDs on Horridon between ad waves. This all serves to chip away at Horridon and bring him as low as possible heading into the last phase. Don't get me wrong, the ads on the doors are super top priority, but whatever you can do that makes sense to get some DPS on Horridon will only serve to help you later. One last general note before heading to door strategy. Bloodlust usage is going to depend a lot on your raid group style. Given it's a 12-minute fight to enrage, you might think you should just double lust. However, there may be particular sections of the fight that give you trouble, and lust is probably best saved for that section. For example, you could lust on the 3rd door and get those ads cleaned up quickly, since they do a lot of damage to the raid with diseases. Or you can wait until the end when the war god is dead and Horridon is taking a crap ton of damage from the raid. In this video, we chose to use it to kill the war god off quickly because the combination of his AoE plus a dire call from Horridon was enough to wipe our raid quite a few times, given that we were 2 healing. Find out what lust point works best for your group. So let's move on to touch on each door briefly to describe possible troubles you might have on Heroic. Remember, everything is the same as normal, but it hits harder and has more health, so you can't be sloppy in dealing with the doors anymore. In fact, it is usually prudent to only bring Dinomancers to 50% health and then switch off to other priority adds before going back to kill the Dinomancer off, because some of these adds are really bad. Door 1 is really about killing off the Wastewalkers quickly and breaking any stuns from the Stone Gazers. Sand traps hurt like hell, so don't stand on the bad stuff, and of course dispel the dot from the Wastewalkers as much as possible. Door 2 is all about the Venom Priests. You really will need to set up an interrupt rotation if you don't already have one from normal mode. Even letting a melee DPS tank the 2nd or 3rd Venom Priest is useful to ensure Venom Bolt Volleys don't get off. It's not a wipe if a couple get through from the Fusions or Priests, but it really can't be allowed to stack high or your healers will lose all their mana here. Again, don't stand in poison puddles and keep Priests and Effusions interrupted. Door 3 is a fairly rough one from the standpoint of ad management. Firstly, most of your DPS will have a pink Dino to deal with, so DPS on the ads is getting lower and lower. And then remember that most of the little ads will fixate on raid members, and thus the tank won't be able to gather up a group of them for DPS to cleave down. Instead, everyone needs to generally be close to the tank to keep AoE going, and to allow the healers to use AoE healing and dispels for the diseases going out. You can't just stack on the tanks because the frozen warlords will get you with the frozen orbs, but just try to keep close to one another for good ad management. Speaking of frozen orbs, try to keep them towards the outside of the room, as you'll soon be running out of real estate between them and the totems of the next door. Door 4 is definitely easier than some of the others, but you do need to watch out for the Flamecaster ads. If they are left at the door and not gathered up with the others, they can easily own some of your healers or tanks with their spamming a fireball. Everyone needs to also watch out for the bears and to not stand in front of them at any time. As well, range and heals do need to spread out a little bit, as the chain lightning from the shamans, once they are unseated from the bears, do hurt quite a bit if allowed to chain. You will probably spend a lot of time after Horridon closes this door to clean up ads. That is okay as long as everything is cleaned up by the time Warlord Jolok comes down. So now the fun last phase. Position Horridon in a good spot in the center of the room. Hopefully it is relatively clean of bad stuff on the ground. Get your raid over by where Jolok hops down and be prepared to pick him up and kill him quickly. Hopefully you only get 3 or 4 of his AoEs going out because they hurt pretty badly. The Jolok tank will be taking heavy damage, and then as soon as Jolok dies, the Horridon tank will get smacked in the face hardcore. Be prepared. Once you have the War God dead, the only things that can wipe you are a tank death or the enrage. Even then, the room is large, and if you have to kite Horridon around after the enrage for a few precious more seconds, that might have to happen for your first kill. Remember that everyone will have pink dinos to contend with, and healers really need to not panic on dire calls. Yes, everyone's health gets really low, but you have to ensure that the active tank survives. You have another minute or so before the next dire call, so just bring people up slowly with smart heals or HOTS while seriously focusing on the active tank. Abuse any class mechanics to clear the triple puncture stacks here. Pallie Bubbles Enhance the Protection should be used to keep stacks at 3 or 4 if possible. If not, you may have to just burn a B-res on a tank, as the damage is stupid here. DPS just needs to turret the boss and make sure not to get hit with the swipe and their pink dino. So in summary, deal with the ads cleanly, keep away from your pink dino, and get your tanks to live through the last phase and you'll have a kill. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe, comment, and or like this video if you found it helpful. Have a good one.